Hi, my name is Knomo, and I'm a producer from Berlin. When I was young, I thought I had discovered the craziest and new sounding music ever, and it was this song that got me especially hooked on it. Ever since, I developed a strange fascination for the different directions that many of my favorite artists could take seemingly simple sounding, basic waveforms and turn them into this amazing and interesting piece of art. But especially this guy. With the few things I could gather, I'd often piece together a short loop, ending up stuck on a certain part or frustrated with it sounding like everyone else, and it really took the fun out at times. You could argue that this is part of the learning process, and that's certainly the truth. Not to mention the countless layers to music production itself, but I just couldn't stop loving to mess with sounds and transform them. However, the number of times I felt unmotivated because I lacked the necessary samples, knowledge and experience with them felt very frustrating, especially considering the speed that genres like dubstep and later color bass developed. Sometimes it would have been much more beneficial to just use high quality samples instead of getting stuck trying to make do with what I had then and eventually losing motivation for the original idea. This, among a natural curiosity towards sound designing, is why I sat down for hours, weeks, months, and eventually years to create this, the Knomo Sample Collection Volume 1, a vast sample library with all kinds of basses, drums, synths, and FX that I thought people could really love to use for creative ideas. I gotta be honest, I have a ton of projects laying about, but almost none of them include any of these sounds, so I thought just giving them away might be better, because I really like some of them, but want to finish my other projects first. In this video, I'll be going to showcase some of the sounds, show what you can do with them, and how to implement them in your own productions. For this, we're going to go through a small section of the demo track's drops, so let's start digging through the project. Okay, so here we are in an empty live set. This is the Knomo Sample Collection Volume 1. I've made sure to add it right here. I decided to divide the pack into one-shots and loops. The loops consist of bass loops, drum loops, synth loops, and the one-shots consist of bass one-shots, drum one-shots, FX one-shots, synth one-shots, and one vocal sample. And in the drum one-shots I also only have one fill, because for both of them I'm probably gonna make a separate pack. The pack's size overall is 1.06 gigabytes, but I also made sure to include a free version of about 200 megabytes size that you can go ahead and download from my Gumroad page. Okay, so let's go through some of the sounds. In the bass one-shots, I made some color bass one-shots, general bass one-shots, glitches, and some stop drops. And I decided to divide the color bass one-shots into stabs and sustains. I think I did the same for the glitch bass one-shots. So let's go through some of the sounds. So these were the stab ones. Let's go through the sustain ones. Definitely lots of fun things you can do with these. These are the general bass one-shots. Let's go through them as well. I made sure to include basically every preset I ever made to create these bass one-shots, and definitely a lot of different methods for making these. Let's go through the core of the pack, in my opinion, which is the glitch bass one-shots. These are the ones I'm especially proud of because I've used a lot of different regs, effects, methods to make all of them. So let's start. Lots of fun things you can do with these. Very fun, and I made sure to include 2 step drums. For the drum one-shots, I made sure to include everything you need to make very nice and full loops. I included some claps, some self-synthesized close hi-hats, as I mentioned, just one fill. And I've also made a lot of different kicks. I made hard ones, some knocking ones, and some soft ones. So I also made some open hi-hats. For the percussions, I made some electronic ones, and I actually recorded some real ones using my phone. However, the quality of these is not too great. I mean, it's fine for production. You might have to edit them and put some effects on them to make them like really shine through the mix. I also made sure to include some rides. I also really like the snares I made. I did the same thing here. I kind of tried to make different ones, some for low punch, with mid punch, and with high punch. So that's the drum one-shots. In the FX one-shots, I included some background effects, drop-downs, general one-shots, some glitches, impacts, some lasers, risers, and some textures to put in the back of your tracks. For the lasers, I made sure to include some with no sub and some with sub. So those were the FX one-shots. For the synth one-shots, I made sure to include some basic plugs that you can basically just throw into any sampler and immediately make a nice instrument out of. And over the course of the past couple of years, I've also made a lot of pads that I also included here. Definitely lots of fun stuff to mess around with. I'm actually really proud of how the pads turned out. I think some of them really sound amazing. Yeah, as I said, only one vocal sample. So that was the one-shots. Let's go through some of the loops. For the synth loops, I made some ARP ones, some ear candy, some basic synth loops and some melody loops, and finally some pad loops. I probably could have put them into a separate folder, but since the loops don't include so many sounds as opposed to one-shots, I just put them in one folder. I also really like the sort of colory flute. I have some that just play basic notes and also some that sound kind of grainy. And you might recognize this one. This one is from the last video. So yeah, there's of course lots more to be explored here. I could only show a fraction of what's actually in here because the pack has actually become so big. So next thing, let's jump right into the demo song. Okay, so here we are in the project for the demo track of my sample pack. As you can see, the project is quite large, but I did make sure to reuse a bunch of the audio tracks I do have and not add too many tracks, because as you might know, for anyone who uses Ableton and makes large projects, as soon as you pass the 100 to 200 tracks mark, it really starts to slow down. So every action you take actually takes a little while, which is very annoying. Ableton devs, please fix. I've heard people say they really like the section from around 2 minutes and 10 seconds to around 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So let's just go through the section that is right there. This is what it sounds like. So yes, that is the section of interest. So I'll be going through everything I did here one by one. Let's actually start where this little section starts, which is 8 bars of some sort of midsection. And let's start with the synths. Right here we have some basic chords playing that just lay the foundation of the whole like sort of vibe we're going for. The key for this section is E minor, and everything that is playing here and just in general everything that is in the demo track is also included in the pack in the full version. And some of the sounds are also included in the free version, of course. This is what it sounds like. As you can hear, I slowly increase the release for these little saw chords, so they get longer and longer. And then after some time, I also just ended up repeating the sections to sort of build the hype and anticipation for the drop that is to follow afterwards. Right underneath our main chords is layered a melody, and it sounds like this. Same spiel as the chords basically. I just repeat a certain section and then make it go faster and faster so that it builds sort of like hype and anticipation for the drop that is to follow afterwards. I forgot to mention, in the chords I also increased the pitch so that's like even more hype, and for this little melody thing I just increased the vibrato that is happening on the last sort of 2 bars right before the drop. Underneath all of that we have some little step that is basically layered every 4 bars, and it happens after 2 bars. So 2 bars of chords and melody, and then this little like step to fill out some space. This is actually a pretty common thing I'm doing. Well, I cut off the lows, then I ducked off some of the mids, and I increased the highs a bit to make it sort of fit in with the whole rest of the track. This very high-end, sparkly and polished sort of sound. And then just put one of my reverb racks on here, which is basically just VR's reverb racks. I added some more things and some more controls. Right underneath we have like everything that is sample based, so let's go through that really quickly. Right here we have a sort of drop down playing that is also included in the pack, of course. As you can see, I did a similar thing here. I ducked down the mids a little bit, increased the highs, and for this drop down I also manually increased the volume so it doesn't go quiet too fast, because I felt like it was going quiet very fast. After these 8 bars of drop down we have a riser happening. As you can see, it's in the key of our little section here, so everything's nice and in tune. And finally, for the melodies at least, we have some ear candy, color bassy sort of synth playing in the background. And then after 8 bars of this, I slowly decrease the volume so that it sort of carves some space for the riser that's coming in and the overall hype and anticipation the last 8 bars bring. Right where this little drop down is, I have also placed a little fizz impact from the pack, just to make everything more fluent and let one section flow right into the other. So yeah, that is that. Right up here, we have the drums playing. There's nothing too complex going on here. We just have on the last 8 bars a kick coming in, which repeats after 2 bars and then like gets faster and faster and sort of fades out. This is what it sounds like. Yes, and right underneath we have this little simple clap playing. Same spiel here. You can see when the kick drum goes a little more thin, I try to emulate that with the claps, which just decrease in volume. And I think I also pitched them up a little bit, which you can hear right here. For the build-up, I do have a bit of sidechaining set up. In my sidechaining group, I just used some basic multiband compression to sort of glue everything together. After that, I used Shaperbox to do the actual sidechaining. So I have this external MIDI input that plays whenever a kick is playing, and I just put down a little note here. And that sends a trigger to the sidechaining, which then ducks the volume whenever the kick is playing. So everything has its space and nothing's suddenly jumping at the listener. And I just automate that from 100% to 0% over the course of the last 4 bars when the kicks get really intense. After the Shaperbox, I have the new kilohertz compactor, which on top of the volume ducking the Shaperbox does, adds a little bit of ring mod sidechaining. If you want like a full video on this, just tell me in the comments down below and I can make it. Same thing, I just let the mix go from 100 to 0%. Like in the Shaperbox. So that is everything that happens in these 16 bars here. Let's move on to the 2 bars right before the actual drop. After our little rise, we have this little melodic break where the actual bass comes in. As you can see, I increased the sidechain strength again in both the Shaperbox and the compactor to 100% when the drop hits. Right before the drop hits, we have this little bass coming in, which just sounds like this. Basically goes from 100% of reverb down to 0%, which just makes it sort of come from the back to the front, which is a really nice effect. And of course, I've included everything that is here in the pack itself, so you can mess around with it if you want to. Underneath this little bass coming in, we have the reverb tails of our chords and melody. And although very subtle, it does help to create the space that is necessary to build the anticipation for the drop that actually follows after the 2 bars. And lastly, I have this little ear candy color bassy loop that we had playing underneath our midsection, repeated right here and turned up in volume a little bit. And I did a similar thing that I always like to do. I just took this little section, repeated it, and then put a tape stop on the last little eighth, I think. So yeah, that's pretty much what's happening right before the drop. Let's go through the dubstep drop. This time, let's start with the drums actually. I increased the sidechain strength again from 0 to 100% so that when the drop hits, every time the kick and snare play, everything else is being ducked down, so they sort of carve their own space. In the drums group, we just have a basic kick and snare pattern playing. I just use this for 4 bars and then repeat it basically. And then just on the last bar only play a kick. And for the first bar of the drop, there's no reverb tails going on, just the kick and the snare playing above the bass. But when the main bass is playing, which we'll get to in a second, I did add a little bit of reverb tails that is just automated in here, which you can hear in the background. And then just repeat that after 4 bars. Then underneath this, I have some cymbals playing that just help to fill out some space. In the second half of the drop, I changed up the cymbals a little bit, made it a little bit more hype. And then for the last bar, removed the main ones and just had this basic one playing. So it's not like too overwhelming. And the fill, which we'll get to in a second, has time to shine. So yeah, let's go through the bass sounds. The drop starts with this stab right here, which is just like a screechy growl almost. And then it's followed by this like squarey sort of sound and a laser reese. And that basically leads into the main section of the drop when the main bass is playing. Over this main bass sound, I layered some white noise, snarl. And I think all the way down here, I layered some more growl noise. So it's like nice and full. Of course, keeping everything tidy, cutting off the lows, stocking a little bit, and making sure everything stays in its respective space. And on the last bar of the 4 bars of the drop, I have this little fill playing, which basically concludes our first 4 bars, and then this sort of motif is being repeated. So we have this stab coming in, and again this little squarey sound, and then I change it up a little bit. Instead of putting the laseries here, I put this sound right here. And then I also edited the main bass a little bit, but kept the layers pretty much the same. So that's the main bass's second part. In the last bar of the drop, I just have this little fill right here. Or a little, maybe the wrong word, it's kind of brutal actually, but yeah. And just with the drums and the bass, you already got this. But as you might have noticed, it does sound a little bit empty, and this is where our background layers come into play. In the first bar, where this little laseries and the little stab and squarey sound are being introduced, I have this background thing playing here. And it basically plays until the main bass is over and makes some space for the fill that's coming right after the main bass. Then I just layered that with another background layer. As you can see, I used the same trick. I dug down the mids a little bit, increased the highs so it fits in with the background elements quite well. Sounds a little bit harsh, but during the mastering it's being compressed quite a lot anyways, so that is no biggie. And then lastly, when the main bass is playing, I have this sort of mid-bass synth layer playing right here, which just sounds like this. And that is basically the background hype all together. Now it sounds very nice and full, and I think in the sample section, oh yeah, one more thing. I have a little bit of the motif from the melody playing right before the main bass. And after 4 bars again. But this time, as you can hear, with the reverb tail fading out and no volume cut. And lastly, I already showed you the growl noise layer. There is this little riser in the background that just glues everything together and makes it a little more fluent. And that is basically it. That is like the whole section. Let's play it all together again, so you get the full picture now. So yeah, that's it for this little section. Of course, we could go through every little drop I made, but the principles are basically the same. I always set up my drums, have some cymbals playing in the back, just to like fill out some space, and have everything be sidechained. As you can see, all the cymbals here in the drums group are not being sent into the drums group itself, like the kick and snare, for example, but they are being sidechained. So yeah, then I have the basses, which just play a little pattern that mostly is like either 2 bars or 4 bars, and then it repeats over the course of 8 bars, and some background hype. And then just like cut it so there's less like back and forth happening. So a section where there's not a lot of background effects, just one main bass playing and then something that happens right after it. And then I just add some risers and drop downs and little effects, little sort of things every now and then, and that's basically the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. Feel free to do whatever you want with the pack. There are no limitations. You can buy the full version on my Gumroad, but as I already mentioned, I'm also including a free version on my Gumroad that you can download as well. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a nice rest of the day. Bye bye.